Hi, my name is Nan Henke. I'm a watercolor artist from Fredericksburg, Texas. I'm here today to teach simple watercolors. Today we are going to paint oranges. If you're wondering what kind of paper and brushes and things like that would be best, please go ahead and read the description section. But I do encourage you, even if you don't have really good stuff right now, paint with what you have. It's more important to paint than it is to have the perfect materials. And anyhow, I recommended some low-cost materials that will give you real encouragement as you see your paintings improve. So the other day when we did the blue bonnets, it was a little bit hard to see my sketch. So today I did a pre-sketch that is all inked in, and you'll be able to see quite heavily what we're going to be doing. So it'll be a cut face of an orange, and behind that 2 whole oranges, and then a little bit of shadowing that we'll put underneath, and some highlight areas on the 2 oranges. You may want to take a photograph of that to refer back to. Once again, we're working with a 5x7 piece of paper just because it's a very convenient size for me. You can go bigger or smaller as you like. Look around the house and see what you have that is round and about the right size and that you could use to help you draw those circles. I've talked about drawing being just a first step that sort of disappears into the painting later, especially when you use the watercolor pencils. But I do like the drawing of the circle to be pretty precise to start with, and then when you paint it, it will become less precise and more realistic. So I happen to have a little cover from a minion thing. I'm going to put him a little closer to the bottom and a little closer to the right, and just run my watercolor pencil around that. I'm doing it in a light orange, so you're going to probably not be able to see much of anything. That's why I gave you that first drawing. Then I'm going to move it to the right and up just a tiny bit and fill in a partial orange behind it. And then I'm going to move it to the left and also up a little bit and fill in a partial orange behind that one. These 2 are farther back because I want the cut orange face to look as though it's a little bit closer to you, a little bit leaning into you. Now that cut orange face, if you refer back to our drawing here, we're going to draw in each of these little triangular sections of orange. I'm going to start by making a circle, small distance inside the first circle. So that's going to be area that I'm going to reserve as white for the inside of the orange. In the very center of it, there's kind of a star shape, but with more points, that is also going to be reserved as white to be the inside of the orange. So it's the star shape here and the outer circle out here. Now we're going to put in these dividing lines by going out from every point of the star to the outside circle, and then put a little bit of a curve to the left and to the right when it meets the outside of that circle. Can you see here how when it comes out it curves a little bit as it meets that circle? So that will give us a fairly realistic look of orange sections. They won't all be exactly the same size. They aren't in a real orange. You can make them closer to the same size if that's important to you, or you can make them more odd if that's the way you like things. I like things a little bit off, a little out of whack. You'll notice my whole star is slightly farther to this side, so these are much bigger over here. I like that difference, and I think that will add a lot of interest. Okay, so let's look at the background oranges first. We are going to get some water on the brush. I have a very light orange color in my palette here. I'll probably have to mix some darker oranges in order to have a variety of oranges. So the light orange color, though, is not a bad place to start for putting an edge on this orange. The circle perfect, but paint it sort of imperfect so that it's more realistic. It's thicker in some places, it's thinner in others. It's sort of wobbly in many places, but that's realistically what an orange looks like when you cut it open. Speaking of which, you can be doing this with a live orange in front of you if you happen to have one. I did bring one with me today. It's actually a tangelo, not an orange, because we're in the time of not having everything in the grocery store. So you take what you can get. So that establishes where the middle orange is. I'm going to go ahead and use the same color to establish my drawing of the other two oranges, just so that we get them out there and you can clearly see where they are before we start going in with some colors. My tangelo that I brought is, since it's not a real orange, it has a funny lump near its stem. Well, maybe I can't reach it to show it to you. Anyhow, so I'm just kind of making up the stem part myself. I forgot to draw that, and I wanted this one here to have a stem. So I'm doing a series of circles and then kind of a starry mini pointed thing after that to indicate the shape around the stem. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the very lightest section. I'm going to say that the major light is coming from the upper right here. So both of those two oranges are going to have a very light spot to them. And I'm just using sort of a lemon yellow to put it in. I'm just putting it in very roughly at this point because I can soften the edges and blend it with more oranges as I go. So I'm going from a lemon yellow to a darker yellow around that and sort of blending the edges on them. And I'm not being too terribly careful of my edges either. And then going to the light orange that I already have mixed. I'm being careful not to run over my stem because that's going to be more blacks and browns. But other than that, I'm just being sort of whatever, wherever inside the orange. If your paint's coming out too dark, you need more water. Spread it out a little bit. If it's too light, you need more pigment. One of the things that you're going to learn by painting a lot is how to get just the right amount of pigment and the right amount of water on your paintbrush at the time. So soften, soften, soften so that that spot of light looks very natural. I think we'll fill in the rest of this one with the orange and then come back in with some darker things. So I'm going to outline this starry sort of a shape that I had around the stem and fill in more of the orange here, a little more water. You notice I'm not a person who sprays their palette and adds most of the water that way. It's just a habit. I like to bring in the water with my brush. Some people like to have the water sprayed on the palette so it's already damp and easy to get at. So now I'm going to drive a little bit of this darker color back up around this light spot. And then I'm going to get a little more water, a clean wet brush, and soften the light spot so that it looks more natural. Okay, now we're going to go for some darker bits on the shadow side. And to do that, we can either bring up another palette and pre-mix a few colors, or we can try mixing right on the page. And I'm going to do a little bit of both to kind of see which one works the best. I have a tendency to mix on the page, but in order to be playing with you on this, we're going to mix a little bit in the palette. It's hard to get the paint into the palette, and usually I kind of scoop up some water before I clean out my brush in order to make a little more volume there, to Can I get it to come down into the middle? There we go. Cleaning your brush in between, very, very important. Dab, 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 dip, dab, dib, dip, dab till you're sure it's clean. If you're going to mix a red into the orange to make it a stronger orange, you want to choose your red that leans to the orange side as opposed to your red that leads to the purple side. Otherwise, you will be making sort of a muddy looking thing. Now, I'd like to have a little piece of the test paper. This is what I do with all the extra paper when I cut paper. I'd like it to be a little darker than that. That's too close to what I have now. So I'm going to clean my brush again, go back and get a little more red, put that in there, trying to leave most of it in the palette, and do a little test. Still not very strong. Must not be getting as much red as I think I am. It's starting to look stronger in the palette, but one of the reasons we do these test pages is that what something looks like in the palette and what it looks like on the piece of paper are two different things. Also, you always have to remember watercolor will dry lighter than what it's put down. Okay, so now it's looking very different from those first two. So I'm going to use this on the small side over here, and we're just going to run a little bit of that up in the darker, what would be the more shadowed area of it. And then I'm going to clean my brush and soften that edge. Being able to control soft edges and hard edges is one of the real joys of watercolor, so that it looks like it just happened naturally. This is a little bit of overrun here. We can fix that. Okay, now we're going to try the opposite thing, which is just mixing on the page. So I'm going to put a little bit more of this color on down here so that it's wet and it's strong in that orange that we already have. Remember, the light's from the upper right, so I'm going to be putting darkness along the lower left to indicate a change there. So I'm going in, I'm taking that same red, and I'm just putting it right on top. I'm being real careful not to put too much in, sort of putting it in by lines to start with. And then I'm pushing it around, blending it, making it part of, ooh, I got a lot there. Gonna have to push that around a bunch. Part of what's going on. I'll have to try and get it a little darker towards the bottom, the darkest place that would have been hidden by this other orange. Okay, that's getting a nice color to it. Let's get that edge taken care of. See how it's a very sharp edge right now? Sharp edges don't happen much in nature. Soft edges and wobbly edges and things like that are much more common. I'm going to drive some of it, if I can, into those star points. Okay, so anyhow, now we have a light spot on each one, a dark area on each one. We're going to add some shadows on the ground so that rather than floating in midair, these will appear to actually exist in space. I'm going to go to my darker palette for this and pick up a dark brown, I think would be good. You could also do something in the gray or the blue family. And I'm just going to touch the bottoms of this, and it's okay if some of it floats up into the oranges themselves, and you can notice that my brown is getting a little bit oranger here. And we're going to have a shadow that actually floats off the page over here. Now I do want to make sure to get in and touch the edges. You don't want any little white stuff left in there that says these are not connected to each other. You want to make sure they're connected to each other. You want to make sure they sort of reflect the shape of what's there. You can also go a little bit darker and heavier in the middle of the shadow. I guess I need more water for that. In the middle of the shadow, where it would be the heaviest, like right there and right in these corners. Should be a little bit heavier. Remember, once again, this is all going to dry lighter than what you're seeing right now. Shadows don't have to be very perfect. They don't have to be very precise. Oftentimes there's 2 and 3 light sources and they wouldn't be very realistic anyhow. But 2 oranges alone for a little while and work on the middle orange. So we said it's white right next to the skin. It's white in this little star in the center. And it's very, very thin little white lines going up to separate each one of these. And then within each one are all of those beautiful shapes of, gosh, I don't even know what the word is for them, little packets of orange juice that live inside of an orange. And we're going to represent those with little dashed lines like this, different lengths, some more connected to the bottom, some more connected to the top of each triangle. The few that we'll start with are going to be our regular orange color, but we'll put some other ones in there for variety. And here's the important thing, because we're going to ink this, we want to leave some white spaces. We want to not fill in absolutely everything, because what the white spaces are going to look like in the middle of each of these triangles of orange is going to be sparkles of light. So you just put them in wherever you feel like, some to the middle, some to the ends. Okay, so that's orange. Now when you look at an orange, they don't all look exactly the same, partly because the light is hitting them a little different, but partly because also they are each a little bit different. Some are more intensely filled with orange juice. So we're going to put in some that are that strong yellow that leans to the red side, leans to the orange side, as opposed to the lemon yellow that we started with up here in there, our little spots of light. You can overlap a little bit, doesn't matter too much. Then we're going to use some of this orange that we mixed. And now I'm starting to say, where do I need to fill one in? Where does there need to be something, because there was nothing before? I want things coming down to the bottom almost every place. I want things near the top, and I don't want too much white space in between, except where those lines are that are going to be the membrane between. So I'm kind of looking at the bottoms first to make sure things are pulled out to the bottom, and then the top, and then the middle. Here's the bottom. They don't have to be very straight either. They can be kind of wobbly. I encourage you to have an orange today or tomorrow and look closely at it. Think about what's going on with all these little bits of color and light inside of an orange. Okay. Now, while that's drying, we're going to go back and address this stem section of the orange, or the belly button as I like to call it. If the orange that you have is more like my Mineola Tangelo, it might be up on a little mound. But in any case, it's probably something in the browns and golds family. I have a gold here that's very pretty. I'm going to start with that around the circle. It almost looks like the orange is around it. And then I'm going to go brown in the center. And I'm not caring too much that the colors are mixing with one another. I'm okay with that. Nice little soft mix is a nice thing. Now the star shape around it is a little more difficult to decide on a color for. I think what I might do is change the color that I've mixed over here by adding some gold to it, just so I get one different orange color. The gold will make it a little different orange. You can just add more red or more yellow to yours if you don't have a gold, just so that it looks a little different. And here, kind of like on the inside of the orange, I'm being a little bit careless, or in a sense careful, to save some whites there. Don't fill in all the whites, leave some whites there. It looks like my brown middle has kind of gotten eaten up, so I think I'm going to come in See what happens if I put just a dot of black in there. Make it a little bit stronger, if I can get enough water on my black. There we go. There we go. Okay, I'm much happier with that now. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully you've inked all of your little orange and yellow lines, and yours looks something like this. If you were smarter than me and put more orange and yellow in there and a little less white, you probably have a better looking orangey looking orange at this point. I'm a little disappointed in how much white I ended up leaving. So we have really just the outside peel of this cut piece of orange to finish, but I may get courageous after that and try adding a little more orange on the inside. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to go once again to the slightly darker orange that we had mixed. And you know what, I think I'm going to have to mix a little bit more. I actually like it when I have to mix more on things because each time they turn out a little bit different. And that way there's more variety of oranges in the finished product. I mean, when you're painting an orange, your primary color is going to be orange, orange, and more orange. So sometimes it's hard to have an orange. Just paint the orange out of your box or your tube. Okay, so we're going to strengthen the peel on this one. And we may have to even go a little redder orange as we get down to the bottom so that it isn't getting lost in the shadows which we created. And it is, it's getting lost in the shadows right there. Here it's coming clear again. Here I can kind of smooth out some of these lines that weren't very smooth. But I think I'm going to try, clean my brush, and try adding a little bit more red to that orange in those places where it overlaps the shadow on the others, and see if I can make it a little stronger. It's not helping, so we're going to go one step farther and just put red right in it. There, like that. Because we want this orange to stand out. And then I'll run it up a little bit till it sort of peters out towards the top. Okay, now that orange stands out. And it's too thick in some places and too thin in some places, but you know what? That's the way orange peels are. Okay, now here's the big challenge. I think that I should take a risk, that I should risk ruining this painting in order to get a little more orange inside here. Now, there's two ways I can do that. And you have to look at your own painting and decide if this is something you want to do or if you just want to stop right where you are. One way would be to go back in with the little stripes of color like I did originally, just put a lot more of them in, then let it dry, then ink it. The other one would be to just put a wash of orange over what's there, so it kind of gives it an orange background to those sections. Now, I know that the ink pen that I used, a Sharpie pen, is supposed to be waterproof. So I should be able to do this without ruining it. Sometimes things don't turn out the way you expect, though. So we're going to take a risk here. And this is good, because one of the things I want you to learn about art is that it is about taking risks. It is about deciding to take that extra step that might ruin your picture, because you're going to learn from it things that will be helpful in the next picture. I'm very big on painting more and more and more and more. Lots of times I'll paint something 3 times just in order to get better at it, and just because I see more every time I do it. Okay, here we go. I'm just going a light version of the orange in there, and I'll probably leave some bits white, but I want that outside edge and kind of the inside. And oh, I see the ink is not as waterproof as promised, but this is a lot of water to be putting on it, I have to admit. So we're going to get some drifting of the ink, which is going to turn some of our orange a little bit green. But you know what? I'm already thinking it looks more orangey on that side, even with that problem. Almost there. I'm trying to put as much of the brush marks at the angle that I want the whites to be at. At the bottom I kind of have to go sideways, but I want to go angled in on the rest of them. Okay, that's about as much as I'm gambling today. So, final step is always to sign the painting, and I encourage people to have something on the back that says when you painted this, because you will be amazed at how much better you get with each painting, and it'll be fun to go back and look at them and see how you grow. So, as always, thank you for painting with me today. There's places you can like and follow and subscribe to see my art, but I want to see your art too, so post it and mark it so that I'll see it. Thanks for painting with me today.